Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Clay, and today I want to walk through a little lesson about power chords and see if we can spice up our rhythm playing. Power chords are pretty essential to electric guitar, and in a lot of ways they are the bedrock and almost like the defining element of the basic electric guitar rock and roll sound. So, you know, a lot of ways too, they're kind of at a beginner level. A lot of times when beginners, they'll learn these they'll learn these open, cowboy chords. But then also when they start getting into more of the rock and roll side, they'll start learning, power chords, So, and one thing I've seen too, so I play in a band at church, and power chords they work really well for a lot of those songs and those sounds. But sometimes I think it can just be a little bit bland because it is more of a beginner sound. It's important to try and find different ways of spicing it up and bringing some variety and some, just something a little bit different, so that I'm not just playing, not just playing that, but trying to spice it up a little bit. So there's a couple different things that I want to talk about just that can hopefully help spice up your power chords and make them sound a little bit cooler. First thing is to not just play, 6th string and 5th string root power chords, which look like this. So your root here is here, and then your shape looks like this. 1, 5, 1. To not just play that shape, but also go up here. So this. So basically, this is a G, and so what happens is it still is 1, 5, 1, same as this, just an octave higher. And the shape is slightly different. This time the pinky's out instead of being here. It's and the way to kind of locate yourself with these is, so previously with these 6th string roots, the highest note you're playing here is your pinky. That was the high. It's at the octave. It's a G. So now it becomes your root. It becomes the lowest note you're playing. I find that these chords are really fantastic for both positional things and also because they sound different. So dealing with the sound, just like take a listen. I mean, they just sound really, really punchy. They cut through the mix, and if you're playing with a bass player, maybe a keys player, you kind of have a lot of that low end and that lower mid-range down pat. If you're playing this, you're gonna have a hard time cutting through the mix. So playing this up here, it just slices through the mix like a knife. Sounds really, really great in the context of a band. And so yeah, definitely want to encourage those. So the other power chords that you can play are here. So this the previous one was like a D shape. This one's kind of like a G shape. Open 3, 3. So you can play it up here. Now I tend to bar here, so I bar my pinky, but you could stretch your ring finger there. And once again, so this is a C. Once again, very, very punchy, very cuts through the mix, and just it really brings a lot of spice and variety instead of just playing. You can do something really. It just has a way different sound. And a couple things to be aware of when you're playing both of this shape and this shape is you need to be more cautious of muting your lower strings. When you're playing these shapes, it's really easy to mute everything with this finger. just because you kind of like lay it over top of everything. But with this one, I use my middle finger a lot to mute these two strings. So I'm holding this here with my ring, and I'm still going to be covering especially this high one. But with these bottom two, I like to use my middle finger just to lay them right on top. So you can strum nice and full. And the same thing applies here. You know, and you could use your thumb too. If you like to get your thumb over the top, you certainly could do that. Just to give you some options. And so yeah, I think they sound great. They add a lot of variety. But also another thing to think about too is positionally. They really, so like instead of if you're making a D to G transition, you know, your song maybe goes, you know, that space there when you move from this chord to this chord, it can kind of lose some continuity. However, when you do this, you know, it's just moving vertically instead of horizontally and vertically. It just makes it a little bit of a simpler transition. It just can help you be more accurate, hit those changes quicker, really keep your rhythm going. It just can really help with some of those. And now you can get 4 different power chords in, all on the same fret, which is cool. I mean, that really just adds a lot of variety. So yeah, first thing is try to make use of these different chords all across the strings, not just the bottom two. And then the other thing I want to talk about is inverting power chords. So what that would look like is if we've got a G here, the inversion would be like this, which is actually a C. So this is, instead of playing your C here, you can play this. So what I'm playing there is we've got a bar here on the 6th string and the 5th string with my 1st finger on the 3rd fret, and then I got my pinky here on the 5th fret of the 3rd string. So all I'm doing is taking my ring finger off and then replacing it with this bar here. It's got a really, really deep, rich sound, which is very cool. And so, like, where if you're thinking about it in the context of how you play this, it'd look like this. Instead of, and definitely you talk about continuity between these two chords. You know, these G's are not changing. So I mean, the chord, it really, really smooths the transition from one to the other. And once again, if you're playing with a bass player, he's probably going to be doing something like this. You know, he's playing the roots most of the time. So what you're doing is you're only playing, instead of playing root 5th root, you're playing 5th root 5th. So you kind of like can combine this low note with his bass note, and it just makes like a massive, just awesome. It sounds really, really great in combination with the bass. And you can do that. So let's play the C here. You know, so that drops to an A. And that's another thing to be aware of too. So instead of your guide note being, you know, your lead finger, it's actually this one underneath it. So your root note is actually this one. And actually, if you want, you can do this. You just keep it like this shape on a 5th fret, but then extend your finger. I mean, that's the same sound. And you can actually do this too with these higher up power chords, so that would look like this. Same thing here. All I do is just drop this ring finger to this bar, And same thing, it's a little bit different when you get up here. You actually drop this note to, you put your middle finger here, so it looked like this. So yeah, just a couple things to think about, spice up your rhythm playing. Last thing I'd like to do before I close out is just to like go through an example, and just like encourage you guys to try and be creative and use all of these different chords to really spice things up and look for like a variety of ways of playing the same passage. So let's say that our rhythm passage is something like, you know, G, C, G. So if that's our passage, you know, that would be like a really standard stock way to play it. You know, you got your cowboy chord. Yeah, but we want to make this electric guitar. You maybe have an acoustic underneath. So let's try to see if we can use some of these different power chords. So I'm going to use a combination of, you know, going up higher and also using an inversion and some standard power chords. So I'm going to try this. So what I was doing there is starting off with a 3rd fret root instead of, so it's a G. Instead of playing it there, I'm playing it up here. And then all I was doing when I would go to the C, all I was doing there is going to the inversion. So I'm just dropping this and adding this. And then I was playing a standard D power chord here on the 5th fret. You know, and you could do this in other ways too, you know, going up here. So yeah, be creative. I mean, you could play your G all the way up. And that's another way you could do it. Just go way up high. And that's actually just an octave above that same pattern. You know, if we got a G here, we could do this. Inversion. Back to G. Or you could also play the D here. So. So yeah, that's just a couple different ways of playing, you know, a very basic G, C, G, D, very standard run-of-the-mill sequence. Just kind of spice it up a little bit. So yeah, definitely try to use these power chords, spice up your rhythm playing, and let's make better music. Peace out, guys. See you later.